What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're exploring the various mechanisms offered by Tactile Turn. Now, if you're not familiar with Tactile Turn, they're a Texas-based pen company offering premium pens out of premium materials, and they also happen to be deeply ingrained in the EDC community. They recently introduced a flashlight. They have their own line of knives called Tactile Knives, so good chance if you're in the EDC world, you've at least heard the name Tactile Turn. And today we're really going to only be exploring the mechanisms. We're not going to talk as much about the body of the pen or the inserts, which seems a little bit strange for a pen video, I realize that, but to be honest isn't just super relevant for this video. And the reason for that is they offer these in a ton of different configurations. So all of the ones you see here, for example, are the standard length, but they also offer a short version as well as a mini version, slim versions of some of the thicker pens as well. The pen insert also doesn't matter all that much because each of these is made to accept over 20 different inserts, including popular ones like the Pilot G2 or my personal favorite, the Uniball Signo 307, which does require a little bit of modification, but that modification is just trimming 2mm off the back, so not rocket science by any measure. And on top of that, they also offer it in several different finishes. You can kind of see a spread of that here on the table with just the three pens we're looking at. We have a titanium pen on the right, Cerakoted titanium in the middle, which they do a lot of, especially for their seasonal releases, and then Ultim on the left, which was a pretty limited run of I think only about 200. Now on top of these ones though, they have also done G10, micarta, embrite, as far as other metals outside of titanium, a bunch of different anodization colors of aluminum. They have copper, brass, zirconium, and of course all of those different coated seasonal versions of the titanium. And you can also swap out the pocket clips with stuff like zircuti and other exotic materials. And so tons of different options. It's not going to be super relevant to these individual pens, but I did grab a sample of each of the different mechanisms that we're going to take a look at. And so might as well get into that now. I've been yapping about 2 minutes and we still haven't gotten into the point of the video, and I did want to keep this one short, so let's get it moving. We'll start with the OG, which is the bolt action. And this is the OG of not only Tactile Turn, but the EDC world in general. If you have a pen from any sort of EDC company, especially like a knife company that made their own version of a pen, they most likely made a bolt action version of it. But this one's been around for quite a while. It's not the original design of a bolt action. I believe that honor goes to Dark Metal Design. Shortly after that, Bellholter and Mad Max Co. I know released a bolt action pen in 2009. So these have been around for a very long time. And because every company's made one, they have lost a little bit of their luster in my eyes. I still enjoy a bolt action pen, love bolt action pens, but it's not as exciting. It's not gonna really excite a lot of EDC people because most of them have already seen something like this. Now, that being said, they did execute it extremely well. We've got the reverse J-shaped housing for our bolt action, and that is incredibly smooth. The other versions that you see, there's more of like a check mark or V-shaped one, as well as a more U-shaped J or blocky shaped J where it's straight down, straight over, and then higher up. And those ones can be a little bit more clunky feeling. They can be very smooth as well, just depending on the internal mechanism, but they do offer a bunch of different ones. Theirs is a reverse J-shape for righties and a regular J-shape for lefties. They do offer a left-handed version, which I think is pretty cool as well. Now, although I think it's lost its luster a little bit in the EDC world because it's such a common mechanism, in the regular world, I think this is still a conversation starter. In fact, I carry bolt action pens quite a bit. You pull one out in a meeting and you kind of fidget with it a little bit, you're gonna draw some looks and maybe even start some conversations. So if you're extroverted, that's great. I think especially in the business world, anything that's memorable, as long as it's not memorable in a weird way, something like a quirky or a cool pen, is a positive. And so it's great to have these like weird little conversation starters and still a fun mechanism that most people outside of the EDC realm haven't seen before. That being said, so we're gonna move on to our next mechanism they introduced, which is the side click. And this is a more simple mechanism, a little bit more intuitive, and a lot more similar to what you're gonna see on standard pens. So in that sense, it's a little bit less exciting, but I still find this one a lot of fun to fidget with. It has a nice tactile click to it. It's very appropriate from a pen from Tactile Turn, and that reset button is just a lot of fun to press. It also keeps you from accidentally unpressing it if you multiple click that end piece, so you can always kind of tell if it's open just by feel because the button won't re-click it again until you reset it. And so this one says reset on it. Most of them do not, regular side clicks. This was one of the seasonal releases. Actually, this one was a reverse of the seasonal release made for Blade Showline, I believe 2023, and so kind of a special edition of it, but they do make make this one. It's readily available. You can order it anytime on their website in other configurations. And to be honest, even though this one doesn't have the novelty of the other two, now that I have the other two, I would probably pick this one up again and again if I'm picking up different variations, because it's my favorite to use. I like having at least one of the bolt action or the switch in my collection, but this one's just the most natural and regular pen-like. Also probably the best option if you're an introvert and don't want to have random conversations about your pen, because this is pretty standard. Obviously this one's pretty bright, but if you get something in a classic material like titanium or copper, brass that isn't quite as flashy, I mean they look fancy, but everyone's seen pens like that before, you're less likely to get that random conversation, but a little bit less exciting than the other two from a novelty standpoint. And that brings us to the most recent introduction, and this is their switch mechanism. And it's not technically their mechanism, they actually licensed this one from Magnus Clickshift. So this was based on the original Magnus Clickshift V1, which is a fairly expensive pen that's also not readily available because it often sold out. It was basically a custom. The mechanism inside, although on the surface, is maybe the simplest. Everyone knows how to operate a light switch, and this functions just like a light switch. If my camera will focus on it, functions just like a light switch, so everyone knows intuitively how to use it. But from an engineering perspective, the internals on this are probably the most impressive of the bunch, which makes it kind of an interesting one in its own right. I think it also has a novelty factor that we don't get with the bolt action, because outside of that click shift, which isn't a super kind of popular model where a lot of people are even aware of it because it was kind of hard to get. They're on V3 now, they do pre-orders, but still right now if you go on the website you cannot buy a click shift V3. The prices come down a little bit. I think they're around like $190 or $170 now, $170 now, but these ones are still going to come in a little bit cheaper, and so a little bit more affordable option and readily available. You can go on Tactile Turn right now and order one of these switches. Now the weird kind of thing with the switch is that right now they're only available in the standard length, I believe, as well as in titanium finishing. So hopefully we'll see some of those other finishes in the future. But this is definitely the funnest mechanism, because even people in the EDC community, like I said, really haven't seen this one. So if you want to kind of draw attention with that switch mechanism, I think this is probably the coolest of the bunch. Now, one advantage that I haven't talked about is that the bolt action version is probably the most customizable. So all of these you can swap out the pocket clip, although I don't know if you can do it on the Ultim version because it doesn't mount the same as the other options, but at least the other options you can usually swap out the pocket clip. On the bolt action you can also swap out the bolt. So say you go over to like a Zircuti pocket clip, you can also do a Zircuti bolt on there, which gives you a little bit of extra customization for those guys that really like to make their gear their own and just kind of one of a kind. That's going to be the most customizable. One other thing I'd love to see from Tactile Turn, I doubt anyone from there is watching this video, but on the off chance they are, I would love to see a standard click. I think Tactile Turn is the perfect company to do it, because even though that's the most common, that's what you see on a lot of like plastic pens and things like that, just a standard back click to deploy it and then standard back click to retract it. I think they can do it a little bit different with a very tactile click, and maybe even offer the opportunity to put different style of switches in there, similar to what we see on keyboards, where maybe you want a switch that's mushy and silent. But for me, I would love a super tactile switch that if you're in a library and you click it, you're turning heads, and this just, I would find that super satisfying, a lot more quick to tap than this where you have to kind of go back and forth. I think it would be the most fidgety option, even though it's the most basic, but sometimes the most basic is the best option, and would love to see something like that from Tactile Turn. That's it for these ones. This ended up being way longer than I expected, but let me know what you think of these down in the comments. Which is your favorite mechanism, whether that's from Tactile Turn or from another brand that maybe I need to check out. I would love to do more pen videos. I want to make sure they're relevant and I can talk about them for at least several minutes. It doesn't make sense to make a video on it if it's going to be a 1-minute video, but if there's interesting things to take a look at, would love to do more pen content, because it's a rabbit hole that I've kind of accidentally gone down. Never meant to, but really enjoy it as well. Thanks again for watching though. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, checking out some of my other content. All helps the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.